Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Red Path. Once again, it's Jamie and Dara. Wrong side. I always do that. It's always on the other side. And that was your hot take intro. Shit, it's cold open intro. I'm just going to leave it there. Cold
Hot
open
take intro
intro.
is good. I like it.
All right, so we're back and we are going to talk about a little RTT we competed in on the third day of the LVO. Because if you are not rocking a undefeated record at these kind of events, you don't play on the third day in the major. That's typically for the top eight. They'll do a shadow round and stuff like that, and they'll go on to win the big prizes.
I dropped out of the finals just so I could play in this RTT,
Of
by the way.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, do you want to introduce talk about what the event, the RTT was like?
Sure. Why not? So we had it in our heads, kind of in the lead up to the event, that we were going to try and organize TRP RTT, so the Red Path Rogue Trader tournament, on the Sunday by getting as many World Leader players as possible to play in an 8-person pod to see who's the best World Leader effectively. We didn't know logistically if that was going to be possible, but as it turns out, it was possible. The TOs were very accommodating to us and let us arrange our own pod, basically, of almost all world leaders. Not quite, as some of the world leader players had already left, and some of them, Ron, were still in bed. But yeah, so what it ended up happening was we brought in some kind of friends of the group, I suppose, and people that we'd already played. So yeah, Jamie, why don't you run us through the players that were involved in the Red Path RTT on the Sunday of the LVO?
So there was yourself and me. There's two. Then we had Mark Whitaker, we had Ben Sanson, and we had Keith, the Triple Scorpion Khorne Order Skulls. Those were our 5 world eaters. Then Don Hooson brought his Death Guard. Then we had Rob, who's part of the Smite Club, Don and Mark's team. He brought his Chaos Knights. And then for our 8th final, because we were kind of missing someone, we didn't know anyone else because Ron overslept or just slept in. You had a great idea of inviting the 8th member, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Well, I was looking around the hall furiously thinking to myself, who can we possibly get to complete this RTT pod? And I happened to see a Thunderhawk gunship being carried through the hall, and I said, well, if there's one person I know who would like to play against an awful lot of world leaders, it is my friend Luke, who I played in round 6 and his Thunderhawk. So ran up to Luke and pitched the idea to him, and he was very much on board for it. So he was the lone Imperium player facing off into a chaos world, as we eventually decided on the narrative of the event being, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it very much was. He was a great guy. I got to play him in round 1. So yeah, we had our 8 players. Mark had basically, because Mark TOs locally, so he really sort of understands how to get all this stuff done quickly and efficiently. He went and spoke to the judges, got our pod set up. I think we ended up rolling off for the first round. And I paired into Grey Knights. I paired into Luke and his Thunderhawk Grey Knights. And what was your first round pairing?
I paired into Rob and his Chaos Knights.
That's right, yeah. So we're going to briefly go over those games. We should have some footage popping up in a second because Dara would walk around and kind of do an overview. So
I was the anchorman, essentially.
Yeah, definitely something that rhymes with anchor. So we'll cut to that now.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Red Path. We have the Sunday RTT in the LVO, and what we have is a World Leaders RTT featuring some friends. So I'm going to run you through everyone. We got Robert here. He's bringing his Chaos Knights.
Say hi, Rob.
Say hi, Rob.
Wah!
We like it. It's awesome. Then we've got Jamie over here on the next table. He's got his Super World Leaders. But more importantly, we have the Thunderhawk gunship.
Say hi.
Here. Then we've got, all right, what's going on here? Who's playing here?
I'm playing.
Oh, okay. We're over here.
All right, we got Mark. He's got the Lord of Skulls.
Blood for the blood god!
You know what's better than a Lord of Skulls? A Lord of Skulls.
Oh, fuck!
Greater Brass Scorpions. And then on the top table, this is where things get sweaty and interesting.
Mostly sweaty.
Mostly sweaty.
Mostly stinky.
We've got Ben. Ben's here with his world leaders. And we have the one and only, my favorite and yours, Don Hirson. Don, you got anything to say about this game? This is where we cut to one of those things.
Would you say that this is the worst thing you've ever seen in your life?
From GW, yes.
All right, everyone, this is going to be sick. We'll update you between rounds. We're going to kick it off. Let's go. So before we start,
and we're back. So let's talk about our first games. How did your first game against Rob and his Chaos Knights go?
Pretty good. It was like a dog walker style list with a unkillable Knight Abominant and bunch of Lightning Lock Magiras and all the usual. It was kind of like Chaos Knight good stuff, right? I'm pretty confident in the Chaos Knights on the best of days because I think my army was built to kind of take down Knights. Not specifically to take down Knights, but it was more than capable of doing it. And it has the tools. Yeah, exactly. So it was pretty okay for me. The Red Butchers just kind of walked up the middle of the board and, were an absolute crutch, as they usually are. And yeah, apart from that, it was sort of a trade game of pulling down armatures every other turn, things like that. And it went pretty well in my favor pretty early on. And I was able to pretty much... I think there was one night left at the end of the game. The Abominants did explode at one point, doing a ton of mortal wounds to everything around it. But yeah, like the world leaders just seem to hard counter Chaos Knights quite well because dread tests aren't really that big of an issue when you're basically leadership 9 or 10 across the board. So that was pretty good. I finished that game a 97-45 victory. So that was fairly comprehensive fun.
Yeah. My first game was against Luke and his Grey Knights. And... it's one of those things because someone brings a Thunderhawk. It's like bringing any Lord of War, especially the least favorable or the least favorable Lord of Wars. It could go really badly for you. If they get first turn and a solid to good shooting phase with something like that, it can be devastating. It can cripple your alpha units that you haven't, got to buff up yet and things like that. And Luke did go first. And he did get to position his Thunderhawk where he could see my entire army. And he did
which is basically anywhere, right? You can't hide from the Thunderhawk.
You can't hide unless you're deep striking or, in a magic box or something. And his shooting, however, kind of failed him. I want to say I managed to score a sorcery, one of his kind of really important powers to... I can't remember what it was, but it was something, I think, to buff the Thunderhawk. I may be wrong, but I scored almost every turn against a Grey Knights player because that's what you've got to do. But his shooting phase didn't quite kick off for him. I positioned a lot of my units in dense cover, like my Contemptors were in dense and things like that, or in transports. So I managed to survive reasonably well. I took some damage, lost some, models, but nothing where it was, okay, this is over. Then it rolled around to my turn one, and because I'd taken Eternal Vendetta, of course the Thunderhawk was the target, and my Contemptors had rerolls and +1 and all that kind of goodness. The Contemptors spiked like crazy, and I want to say the Thunderhawk is 30 wounds. He was down to like 8 or 9 wounds at the end of a World Eater's shooting phase.
Wow. Okay, because I was wondering how you brought it down because you were on the table next to me.
Yeah. And because he'd come right up to my lines, that was it. I had Warp Talons and my Demon Prince moved to be like an auto charge or effectively an auto charge. And I went in with my Warp Talons first in the charge phase, just fearing Overwatch because it would be worth doing Overwatch. Just so my Prince would definitely get in because the Prince was going to be re-rolling hits and wounds against that Thunderhawk. And they went in and they absolutely butchered it, like massively ruined it. Excuse me. They really did the work, which is what they should do. Like the Prince was still wounded on 3s, re-rolling, hitting on 2s, re-rolling, wounded on 3s, re-rolling, going through to 5-up save, I want to say, and then doing 3 damage each time. So I ended up overkilling it probably by about 10 damage. It then, I believe, exploded, and I'm pretty sure it did, because I had explosions in every single game I played.
Okay.
Yeah. Normally
Dramatic.
my rhinos, but I want to say it was the Thunderhawk exploded. Dealt some more damage, and then he did lose 5 or 6 models on the disembark because he had 30, I believe.
Yeah, his whole army was inside that thing,
Practically,
right?
I think he had one character and a squad on his backfield, and then the Thunderhawk brought the rest, and there was maybe the Librarian in Deep Strike or something like that. And he lost basically 5 models in the disembark. But the problem was, because most of that was OBSEC, he was able to position in a way where he'd be able to steal my objectives on his turn, because that was it. I couldn't damage him anymore after that. So we rolled into his turn 2, and he didn't really do the damage he needed to do again. And I capitalized on the fight back. And from that point on, he started turn 2 with less than 1,000 points on the table, like more like 700 points probably. And I was practically whole. From that point on, what mission was it? It was 31, right? So Tides of Conviction.
Yeah, Tide of Conviction, the funny objective one.
So because he was so limited, all of his troops were basically in one part of the board near my home DZ, but that allowed me to throw my cultists and my smaller squads of Warp Talon out on the other objectives and just contain him and whittle him down with charge after charge after charge. And basically, once turn 2 was done with, the outcome I feel was inevitable because he'd lost so much of his army, and I was able to hem him in on that mission. So I ended up winning that 95-39. But my God, Luke is possibly the best opponent I've ever played.
Luke is a singular human being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just for some context, a Grey Knights, I believe, is his main army.
It is. Yeah, he told me he's like 6,000 points of them.
Okay. So he would explain every dice roll, every psychic power, every attack. He would give you like this narrative explanation. He's like, and what was his warlord's name? It was
man, it began with C. I can't remember.
It was Calgar or Calgor or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but he had like names for all his characters, of course. And it'd be like Calgar Tigerius or whatever it was. Powers up and warp lightning crackles over him, and he raises his hand, summons the light, and but it was everything, and it added so much to the game.
Man, I felt like I was in the story, because he's so into it, right? He's so hyped, and even when his guys are dying, because it's like a heroic sacrifice kind of vibe about it. I would say like Luke single-handedly rescued my tournament gaming experience.
Right.
Like him being my final game in the event was just like, goddamn, that it was such a high to end on, because you can't not have fun when you play against Luke, I don't think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I need to.
He's a guy who actually embodies like the spirit of what the Red Path tries to kind of get across when you go to a table, right? Just like you can't have a bad time against them.
Yeah. He was, like I said, probably the best player the most fun and engaging player I've ever played against. And if more people played like that, my God, could you imagine? People talk about how 40K can't really be an esport because it's, quite long and everything. But if you had guys like him playing on streams, my God, the viewers would skyrocket.
2 people like him playing against each other on stream would be the most hype thing ever, I think. Yeah,
it would be amazing.
So, Luke, if you happen to be watching, thank you so much for giving both of us incredible games. Yeah,
reach out to us, because I'd love to, make sure we can meet up at more events and maybe get you on the channel to have a chat and just go over your philosophy, because it was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll now cut to probably the intro video, or your talk about round 2. So let's cut now.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Red Path RTT at the LVO Sunday. Round 1 has just concluded. I was victorious in my game against the Chaos Knights, so I've not been eliminated. Let's move down to the table and see what's going on. So, on this table, we've got Ben and Mark. World Leaders on World Leaders action. It's going to be big. This is the elimination table here. We've got Don. He's playing Rob, so it's going to be Deck Guard versus the Chaos Knights. That's going to be brutal. But let's walk up here. This guy's a stinker. Let's see who I'm playing. So on the top tables, to see who gets to the final, we've got myself playing Jamie. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be savage, but obviously I'm going to win. So we'll catch up soon. Catch you guys in a bit.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So round two kicked off with so basically the RTT was elimination, right? So if you lost your game, you're out of the tournament. So after round one, Ben was still in. The two of us were still in. Was Mark
Mark.
still in? Yes, Mark was still in. Yeah, yeah, because I
Yeah.
played Mark in game three. And yeah, it was quite interesting because we paired against each other,
Yes, we did.
which was the redemption arc for me, hopefully, to make up for my loss in the house. I went into it a lot of pressure, a lot of weight on my
The
shoulders,
weight of the world was yeah.
Yeah, it
You could
was
see it.
tough. You could see it. You could see
Yeah.
it.
When the names
And
were paired, when we popped up on BCP, I looked over and there was a singular tear down Dara's face.
yep.
It was, I knew, okay, I have to crush him. I have to crush him beneath my boot and grind his bones into dust.
So on that note, why don't you walk us in? I think we were playing, was it Death and Zeal in that mission, I believe?
Yeah, it was
One of the quarters, either
purple,
Death and Zeal or conversion anyway.
definitely.
Yeah. So do you want to walk us through the game, Jamie?
Um, Honestly, I don't remember much of it. We was just like it felt like we were just chilling and like having a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can bring up the scores though. Let's see.
I have the scores here. It was 56-84 to you.
I've got it 57-84, so I gave
Well,
you an extra score.
sure. Participation point.
Who went first? Can you remember?
I went first. Yeah, I went first.
I think okay.
And
So
what we had was you pushed very strong at the two quarters with your rhino plays, which I'm a really big fan of how you use your rhinos with the guys hanging out at the back and then continuously
yeah,
jumping in and out. I've never seen someone embark back into a rhino more than I've seen you do it, but it
I
works.
love them.
Yeah. So you had a
Yeah,
really strong, like two strong flank pushes basically, and then you had the
yeah,
core in your home field of the Volkite Contemptors, which are the bane of my life after that week.
yeah.
But yeah, so I pushed really hard in the my bottom flank, your top flank, with a bunch of my alpha units, and I sort of pushed into the top with a drill and some berserkers, but it was more like a bait push rather than anything. And my red butchers kind of just hung out in the middle rune to just be there and see what was going to happen, which was fine. And I think the early side of the game was kind of going in my favor. I was winning a lot of those trades. Maybe the fight up in my top, the sort of bait push wasn't necessarily going amazing for me, but it was a bait push. It wasn't supposed to be amazing, but I was still taking some, forcing you to do things down there, which was fine. And I kind of ended up owning the my right hand quarter basically.
Yeah.
After a few turns, after I brought a drill up in that quarter, right? But
Oh, the
you
drill you forgot about, right?
Well, look, it is what it is. I did forget about a drill. After I brought it up, so what I did was I moved it behind a building so I could shoot into the building and clear out a berserker squad, which I naturally did.
Yeah.
But then because I'd moved it behind the building, I forgot it existed for turn 4 and 5, which was quite amusing and maybe quite impactful, but we'll never know. Meanwhile, in the top flank, you kind of pushed a Baden in over there and sort of a bunch of other berserkers and started to clean up in that area. So we did a rotate basically. So I was down here, you were up here, you owned this part, and I owned this part, which was fine. But the problem is, I just ran out of things too fast, I think. Would you agree?
Yeah. That was like I feel in the trade game between our two armies on paper, you have more alpha units because you have your butcher blob, you have your chosen 8-man, correct?
Yeah.
And then you have a 6-man possessed. These are
And
all
an 8-man berserker.
and an 8-man berserker. So these are 4 key units. Whereas I had a lot more, I had the 5-man berserkers, I had range with the contemptors. So, and obviously Abaddon, as cheesy as he was, not being able, you just couldn't damage him effectively enough, quickly enough.
Yeah. In this game especially, I couldn't deal with Abaddon, really.
Yeah. It just gave me the ability to hold you back, sacrifice, whittle you down. I'd pop off a couple of models with the contemptors, then 5 berserkers go in, a couple CP or rerolls or what have you, and they can clean it up. So I think it was more And also the player place terrain allowing me to have that shooting area, have that place where my contemptors could just like, I
It
can't
really
be
felt
bothered.
like the middle of that board was like hell zone for me, right? Because
Yeah,
there was nowhere. There was the way you did the player place terrain was really good, and there was nowhere for me to hide in the middle of the
yeah,
board. And as soon as I walked out there, we saw what happens. My chosen and my demon prince got absolutely hosed by the contemptors in one turn.
yeah,
It was grim stuff, really, really grim stuff. But at the end of the day, you traded better than I did. You had better zone control, and a really strong home field.
yeah.
Even though Barney held my home field and did quite well
Yeah.
in the end. Yeah, you came out on top. A well-deserved and comprehensive victory, 56 or 57 to 84.
Well, it was a good win. It was a good moment of victory, but it did mean that I then had to go in and play round three against who turned out to be the number one World Eaters player of the season. And there was a lot riding on this game. So we'll cut to whatever video footage we've got and we'll be right back.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the World Eaters Red Path RTT LVO 2023. In our last game, we have the finals going on here. I was defeated by the wonderful Jamie, and he's facing off against Ben. So I'm playing off for third with Mark. But over here we've got the grand finals. Jamie, anything to say before we kick it off?
Blood God skulls, the skull throne, kill me and burn. I'm gonna fucking kill him.
Ben, you got anything?
I'm gonna die, apparently.
We're all real tired and all our voices are going, but it's gonna be fun. Let's see where we end up. Stay tuned, folks. See you soon.
Okay, so we're back. Now, Dara, you went in to play for third place, right? And you was playing Mark, right?
I sure was, yeah. And what a game.
How was it?
It was amazing. I mean,
that was your first time playing Mark, right?
I'd never played Mark before.
Right.
It was exactly what I imagined it to be. It was as incredible and as fun. Like anyone who's talked to Mark knows he's a really jovial, really fun guy who just exudes this energy, which, like Luke is pretty unmatched. And I had a feeling going into that game. I knew the type of game that I was going to be playing, and it was exactly the type of game I thought it was going to be. It was just tons of fun, screaming blood for the blood god at each other. Had a drill make an 11-inch charge into a Vindicator in turn one, which was pretty hype. That was a big blood for the blood god shout from me. It didn't kill it, but it was awesome. And yeah, I was supposed to go a little bit into the game. It was real back and forth, real big fight over the mid board. He took skulls for the skull throne on my demon prince with Khorne. So I felt that I had to match that energy, and I put skulls for the skull throne on Khorne with my demon prince. And the real highlight was when his land raider, it was like charged into my lines with everything that was inside it. And Khorne did charge my demon prince. And Khorne did not kill my demon prince on his first activation. So I interrupted combat before Khorne's second activation, and I turned Khorne into a meat crayon on the ground. So I managed to get the skulls, which was nice. However, the victory was short-lived, as the next turn, his Hateful Mo just came up and slapped the crap out of my Demon Prince. And then my Hateful Mo came down and slapped the crap out of his one. So there was a lot of kind of like, oh, I see what you're doing, I'll do it as well moments. But yeah, so he had his double warpsmith vibe going on, which was awesome. One of them was just determined to like hunt down a drill all game until eventually the drill just killed him. And he did all the classic Mark plays that you expect, like cultists coming out of strategic reserve and raptors coming in and torching a bunch of my cultists. I had Barney face off against an ungodly amount of things in that game as well. He took like a full heavy bolter complement from the Land Raider and lived through it. But he was charged by a squad of berserkers who turned him into Barney Paste, who were then avenged by a drill that came out in my own deployment zone, dislodged a squad of berserkers who charged into his. So it was such a fun and funny game. I just couldn't stop laughing the whole time through it. And we were both exhausted from playing. This was game 9 of the weekend, and we were just kind of like throwing stuff at each other, being like, this is fun. The Red Butchers were suitably obnoxious as well, doing all the stuff that you expect them to do. But I really enjoyed Mark's list. There was a Lord of Skulls in it, but it disappeared pretty quickly.
Right.
Yeah, it drifted its way into, I think it picked up all my chosen. It just kind of like came down one turn and just harvested them. And then the Red Butchers came up and just said, hey, what's up? And kill the Lord of Skulls,
As
basically.
they are wont to do,
Yeah, as they are wont to do. But it was an incredible game. Eventually, Mark took the victory. It was 73-87 to Mark, so quite a close game.
very close. Yeah.
And you know what? It was perfect. It was the exact way that I wanted to end such an amazing weekend of games. A brilliant opponent to close it all out on against as well.
Well, good. I'm glad it was a good game, and yeah, I've played Mark on TTS, and yeah, it is a fun game. And you play against the Lord of Skulls, the Land Raider, the Vindicators. It's like it's just fun. It's just something about
It's
it.
just fun,
Very
right? Yeah,
brutal
it's just
and
fun.
unforgiving, but it is also fun. There's something special about it. So, unfortunately, I was in the finals, facing off against Ben. Ben's list is like the archetype of an Alpha Strike World Eaters list. He runs the Dreadclaw, a squad of 9 Berserkers, Exalted Champion with Violent Urgency, and a baton comes up, so he's getting 7-inch charges straight away with his Berserkers, because they are core and World Eaters. The Claw can get an 8-inch charge. The Exalted Champion can get an 8-inch charge. Or maybe a 7. I can't remember if Abaddon's +1 affects core and characters or just core, but it doesn't matter. So he went first, but I knew that's what his army did because I understand World Eaters and I understand the concepts of his list. And I'd screamed out and I'd pre-game moved Warp Talons and I believe a squad of cultists. I can't remember exactly, but I screened them out as best as I could. I had like a rhino in each corner because this was on a 33. It's a angular deployment. It's the one
I
where
can tell you right
move.
now. It was
as I can look as well.
secure missing artifacts.
So I think what had helped him win the game was he got to move the first objective, and he pulled my home objective to the center, where obviously I wanted it to be further back. I then adjusted the other two, and then he adjusted his final one. But that one was the critical one, and he definitely made the right choice there. But his Alpha Strike, I'd screened out as best I could, and he failed the 7-inch charge with a reroll. So he was stuck in no man's land, practically, with Warp Talons nearby, in range of Contemptors, with Berserker, 2 squads of Berserkers, one in a Rhino, one ready to jump out or jump in. So I then proceeded to pretty much cave his Alpha Strike and win that skirmish. However, the issue was, because I was focusing on absolutely wiping that as best I could, I was unable to either get angles on or effective volume on the Terminators, which were trundling up the board, and the ones which would deep strike in. Which meant once they got where they needed to be, probably round 3, because there was the Black Rune on one, there was Illusory Supplication on that or the other. He was able to get a lot of good movement out of them with the Red Butchers and, charging but holding until the other combat had finished. He was able to get them where he needed them, and then once they met combat, it swung the game because I just couldn't deal with them. Abaddon going into Illusory Butchers is rough. You're hitting on 4s with no rerolls, wounding on
It's dicey, yeah, real dicey.
Rune, yeah. So you're just not picking them up, and then you make a couple of clutch 5-up invols, and you go, you lose 1 Terminator against Abaddon. That's amazing. So he made a couple of really good plays, like he fell back with Terminators so he could charge in with others, getting the 4 buffs, and just. I could tell why he's the #1 World Eaters player, quite frankly. But he ended up winning that 88, the perfect score, to my 53. But I felt like I played a good game. I learned some lessons. I saw some neat tricks. So it was a good. I had no problem losing the game. Would have liked to have won, of course, but it is what it is.
Can't win them all, dude. Can't win them all.
I know, right?
And apparently I can't win any, so...
You beat Chaos Knights.
World Eaters, there's 2 factions in the game that I have a 0% win rate against. Tyranids and World Eaters.
Oh god.
Who knew?
After the Saturday night or the Friday night or whatever it was.
Saturday night. Sunday we played. Friday?
No, Friday night, after day one of the tournament, the amount of shit you lot were giving me, I don't feel bad at all. The amount of like shit, fuck it. But yeah, like it was a great. This, we just dropped a video probably a few days ago on the social side of the LVO and why that was so awesome for us. This really added to that. Having our own private-ish RTT with people we knew or enjoyed the company of or what have you, it really added a really nice cherry on the top of the weekend's cake, right?
That's exactly what it was. It was the red cherry on top, Khorne's cherry. But yeah, it was awesome. Exactly. It was the perfect way to close it out. And I played 3 awesome games against 3 awesome people. I can't really have asked for a better way to finish the Las Vegas Open. Yeah. Really nice for the judges to accommodate that request for us as well. And yeah, it was brilliant. Really, really fun. Glad everyone could get together and throw some dice and get a couple of awesome guest stars in, like the incredible Don Hooson, who I have so much time for after that weekend. And Luke with his awesome Thunderhawk, and Rob with his really nicely painted Chaos Knights.
They were really cool.
They were gorgeous. Yeah, it was a real pleasure to play against them. Yeah. Yeah, as I took them apart limb by limb.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for this one, I believe. Yeah, this is something we have to recommend, right? If you go to a big event and you can do the kind of like fun but competitive RTT on the third day, definitely do it.
Dude, it was like drugs for me. I needed more Warhammer. There was no way I was leaving Vegas with only 6 games played. I needed more.
Yeah.
And I would have played an RTT on the Monday.
Well, you probably could have done the amount of time you spent at the airport, so
that's true. Me and Ron could have organized an RTT with all the other Warhammer nerds who were stuck there. All that said, it was an amazing way to close out the weekend, and thank you so much for everyone who played in it. Who knows? Maybe there will be more at future events if we can get that sort of thing going. But I think for now that will close it out for myself and Jamie. And our experiences at the LVO, which were incredible. We feel like we needed to do a series of videos on it to justify all the awesome things that happened. And this is probably the last one coming out in that, as we kind of roll into, because we got to start focusing on all the hype for the new codex, which is going to be coming out in the next while. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hang out with us, do all this stuff. Yeah, join the Discord, most important thing, where you can hang out with us, talk lists, etc., get some, inside looks into my brain and why it is the way I build lists that way I do, which doesn't make sense, and how it is that I still have a 0% win rate against world leaders. So that's where you can find all that information. So until next time, folks, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill, maim, burn.